Over the past following weeks, our group has been creating a performance for our site module within Church Nightclub on Woodhouse Lane. This 18th century building, which was formerly known as the Club Halo, has been transformed into Church Leeds, which has held many events since. After exploring many of the churches that Leeds holds, this was the one we decided we wanted to work with. The idea that the building was once a sacred place but has now been transformed and the whole meaning and understanding of the space had been changed into something completely different was one we loved. As Lawson states, meaning refers to not only its external facade but indicates the building's functions and social norms. Although the external of the site is a church, the inside has been transformed into a technological utopia, totally changing the atmosphere and meaning. When we did our first brainstorm about the initial idea of working in a church, the idea that came to mind was about the original position of the church within history, the power it would have had within the city and the country, and how it would have been sat within the hierarchy between religion and the crown. This then got us thinking about the site itself and what we were in relation to the space, how the scale affected made our bodies look smaller. To a site that was used to being jam-packed full of drunken individuals, we were ants, but we used it to our advantage. Our floor patterns would in no way have worked if the place was full. We were forced to think about the kinesthetic relationship between ourselves and the building and how we felt about being there. When first entering the space, we didn't know how to act. As Hunter states, a Christian visiting a strange church will have a little difficulty knowing where to go and how to behave, and we were exactly the same. Walking in, it was silent, despite the overly sticky floor, so we automatically whispered to each other and slowly stepped around the space. I believe this could be down to two reasons. The first being that it felt unnatural to be in a place that was considered a house of God, where people would come to pray and be accepted, and creating a performance there. And the second being that even though a couple of us had been there during an event, it felt wrong to be in a club during the middle of the day. As you can see within the church, although it's been transformed into a club, there are attributes of the space which have remained. It's from these that we got a few of our ideas. The physical construction and design of spaces and buildings directly dictate the manner in which we physically engage with the space, and this was true. There are various aspects of the club, like for example the stained glass windows, which still contain the religious images within them. We used these images from the windows to create poses at the beginning of the piece, as well as actually using the window to stand in, for which we felt obliged to use slower, more softer movements before going into the rocking section after. Maybe this was because we were aware it was religious and a big part of people's lives, but it was a subconscious choice we all made. Within our piece, we had a few key thoughts and themes that we'd set in different sections. One example is within the pole section. For this, our key idea was relating to the animalistic side of people, not only when they are on a night out, but also using the monkey-like movement and relating that to the idea of how God created animals before people. The space thus produced also serves as a tool of thought and of action. That in addition to being a means of production, it is also a means of control, and hence of domination of power. Although these poles were not originally part of the site, they had been added in recent years, and they were still the main influence of the section. As performers, we created movement within the studio around these poles, and then when actually in the space, adapted them, thus making them the producer and in control of the movement, even though we were unaware. Then moving to the upper level of the church, there had been a tree that was placed by the owners of the building. Upon the first sight of the tree, our immediate thoughts were either something ritualistic or the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So we looked into how we could use this within the piece, making it a centre point for just a moment. This led us to standing around and using the hand movements to create this ritual atmosphere. Architecture is defined by the actions it witnesses as much as by the enclosure of its walls. Although the tree is now part of the architecture originally in the site as the church, it had become part of the club, meaning that by doing the movement we did around it, it would be something totally different than what it would have been used for and witnessed through previous years. Therefore, we were changing the architectural meaning. A final theme we kept coming back to throughout the piece was this clubbing atmosphere we wanted to create. At the beginning and ending of the piece, you could see how we came back to this club dance-like movement that you'd expect from drunken people on nights out. As of course the site is a club now, we thought about flipping between these three main themes. It would be something interesting to experiment with, as they each has different social factors but all fit into this physical site. When you change the function, atmosphere and meaning of the place, then you construct architecture, and this was something we found happen while playing around in the site. Although the site itself had already gone through these changes, by experimenting ourselves we changed it in our own way, forcing the audience to see the architecture within the areas in different spaces than they would have if they were just walked around it or witnessed it on a night out. As a group, even though we chose to use this space and make a piece specifically for it, the site itself is a big producer. It wasn't until we were in the space and had explored it that we decided it would be a travelling performance. We also didn't plan on having a piece that played around with a clubbing theme as well as a religious one. It was the function of the space that had influenced the ideas we had come up with and resulted in the final performance we created. In doing so, the fixed identity of the site, building and location becomes disrupted, problematized through the introduction of performance work that might celebrate, contest or contradict the habitatual function of a site. Luckily for us, the site itself had in a way contradicted itself by its external and internal spaces being polar opposites than what you would have expected them to be.